Hi, and welcome to College Planning Untangled, where we simplify the college planning process for our families. Bobby, I talk all the time about the fact that I'm very frugal. So this topic is near and dear to my heart. And that is, we hear out there all the time, people are like, is a college education even worth it? And I was like, okay, you know what? It's a fair discussion. And I wanted to get some facts around this. So we looked at, what is the true break even for somebody that goes to college as far as wages between people that don't go to college. So
Absolutely. So
yeah.
yeah, so we've found some actual data that really helps with this. So yeah, let's just dive in. We can have a quick discussion about this, but I think this is a really helpful way to look at it. I mean,
Yeah, show the
basically,
results. And then
yeah,
as you're talking, I want to type some of this into the comments.
yeah, that sounds great. So okay, I'm gonna add this graphic on here that we found. So Urban Institute went and took U.S. Census Bureau data and just ran some numbers on it, and basically what this graph is showing us is that if you don't go to college and you start working right out of high school, that's the blue line, and your income will increase over time. Your cumulative earnings as over life go up. And if you instead go and get a 2-year associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, at first you have to pay for that, and you have a couple of years where you're out of the workforce. You can see the black line, which is associate's degree, and the yellow line, which is bachelor's degree. They are lower, right? Because you actually go negative for a short period of time, right? Where until, from 18 to 22, your earnings are negative because you aren't, or, you're paying for school.
Yeah, and
But
here's one little caveat I just want to put onto that, Bobby, because I'm sure we'll hear this from people.
Yep.
Well, you know what? You can make more if you get out of high school and go right into the workforce and
Sure.
work hard. Yes, these are averages, guys.
Yeah.
And I would tell you too that in this, you probably have this pulling it down because of all the people that do, graduate and maybe they get married and don't work, all those things. So I just want
Oh,
to
absolutely. Right. So this is just the average of all people, right? And so this is just something to think about, is just on average, it takes till age 31 for cumulative lifetime earnings net of paying tuition to break even. And then after that date, on average, people who have bachelor's degrees will, by age 31, have earned more money net of tuition than people who don't, on average, right? And then they did have some additional analysis on there, which is like, okay, what about how expensive college is, right? That's the biggest factor that affects this. So they said basically, if you go to an expensive private school, then that's going to raise the break even age up to age 38. But still, after age 38, you've still got 30 more years in the workforce,
right?
Where you're going to then be making more on average, right? And if you go to a public, state college that's going to have a lower tuition, on average, that's going to lower the break-even age. What is it to? Is it 26?
It was 31.
Yeah, down to age 26. Yeah. So is that what it was?
No, I'm sorry, Bobby. It was 28.
It's 28, right? So then that lowers it from age 31 to age 28 if you went to a cheaper state college. And there was one other piece of information they had, which is students who work while they are in college having earnings. Effectively, that is giving you work experience while you're in college. So it gives you this step up when you get out of college. So you've already made some money and you've already got some experience in the workforce. So you can probably get a more lucrative job. And that lowers the break-even age down to
Bobby,
age 26.
I think
That's
this
amazing.
is key. I think this is key because I will tell you, with my coaching clients, I'm always talking about get them to work, right? Get them starting to work. And look at what that does. That is, I think, the biggest number in here that I saw, that it lowers it to age 26.
Yeah.
And here's the deal, guys. The research on this shows that if your student works about 15 hours a week, they actually do better in college.
Mhm.
Okay. So I don't want people to be afraid of this one. In fact, I think you should look at this and go, sign me up.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
And by the way, not only are they getting experience, but with internships, but let's not discount the fact that working with the public, waiting tables, bartending when they're old enough, working at the local, dress shop or whatever, is all really great soft skill training that most of our employers today are saying that we're missing out on, that
Mhm.
we need some help there. So, I mean, this is really interesting to me.
Mhm.
The whole shooting match. I mean, I love to
Right.
see that, there is some numbers behind it, that I can, send to my clients as well.
Absolutely. And so I think the one thing that's really interesting is at the end of this analysis, they said, okay, so the main thing here is like, this is assuming you go get a degree, right? That these averages show that, students who get a degree, where they are going to make this kind of money, that where they make more than they would, right? Otherwise. And so, like for students who get a degree but don't get a job that earns that kind of money, right? So they get a degree that doesn't have value, then they don't personally ever reach a break even point, right?
Right. So
And
let's talk about what that looks like. So what are we,
yeah,
say it out loud, right? If you're going to go to school and you decide to go to a private college and you want to be an elementary teacher,
mhm,
your break even is going to be a lot later. And
yeah,
I obviously I'm not going to do the math, but
right.
let's face it, it's going to be a lot later.
But that's going to put you, yeah, way below the average. And yeah, the break even would be a lot later. And so that's a calculation, right? Which is like, okay, you're going to be making less than cumulatively less than people who just went straight into jobs out of high school. Now that doesn't mean that's a choice you can't make in your life, but it may factor into like, okay, if you're like, this is, why for our age range, many people like went in, taught for a while and got married. And then now, okay, you're part of a dual income household or something like that.
Yes, but
But
you used the right word in that, Bobby, and that was choice.
yeah,
So at
yeah,
least by sitting down and doing the math, which I think everyone should do with their kid,
mhm,
right?
exactly.
Do the math, at least have the facts in front of you.
Mhm.
You're a
That's
TCU
the
grad,
thing.
you want your kids to go to TCU? Great. As long as
Mhm.
you understand what the facts are, understand them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing is this is just a conversation to have. And it is something to think about. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, so uh like, so to get into the right place on this graph, right? And to get that break even lower, right? You need to like go into college with some idea of what it is that would be a good career for you so that you can select a good major that will lead to that, right? And that's what you help students do. And this is why that's so important because if you go and get a degree in something that ends up being a field you don't want to work in, which I did twice, right? I got a degree in accounting. I'm not using it. Went and got a law degree as well. I'm not using either of those, right?
Right, and it kinda stalled you along the way because
It
you
did.
weren't getting those raises and all the things that happen. But here's
Absolutely.
the other thing that I think that's important in what you just said, Bobby, is, sending your kid off to college with the figure it out as you go plan,
Mhm.
then you can't make these conscious decisions. So thinking about career path prior to going in, at least we can look at that and say, "Okay, you wanna be some type of a teacher?
Mhm.
Here's some more facts. Well, you know what? If you go into private coaching and tutoring,
Mhm.
you can make a lot more than you probably can as a teacher.
Yeah, possibly.
It's
Yeah.
or at least looking at it and going, you've got options now to consider because I guarantee you there's always a way to figure out the cash part to get
Mhm.
to increase the salary to go, okay, I really love teaching kids. What can I do that I can teach kids? If my desire is to have a higher salary,
Mhm.
then you can talk through that. But you got to do it before you go to school.
Absolutely.
You can get the
Right.
training.
And some people, what they do is, they go and get a master's in public education or in educational administration or things like that. So that, you don't, so that you can work in administration in school or work, for the school board or things like that as well. So more lucrative jobs. The other thing also that's very interesting about this is that all of this analysis, they assumed that students are going to be attending college for 5 years. This is calculated
Yeah.
based on 5 years of school. So another way to fix this break even and make it earlier is to finish college in 4 years, which, you know, back when we went to college, we thought that it was 4 years too, but I sure know a lot of people who took 5 years to graduate back then. But now it's literally kind of the default assumption is that people are going to take 5 years.
Well, on average,
And
it's taken our kids 5.5 years.
Exactly right. And so we all forget that. I think a lot of people get their kids ready for college, and they are thinking when they're looking at the tickets, they're thinking it's going to be 4 years.
I sure as hell did.
Right. And then you got surprised, right?
Well, I got surprised by one. The other one, I got smart. And we've had these conversations before he went, right?
But yeah, so people got to think about this as well, which is if you go in without knowing what your major is going to be, and then you change majors a couple of times, you're going to be there 5 years or 5.5 or 6 years, right?
More than likely. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Bobby, I love that you brought that point up because you can keep inching that break even down, and we get really excited about that. The other thing that I don't want to forget to bring up is they talked about paying for school up front versus doing student loans, and how does that affect the break even? And they actually said it does affect it, but it's really minor that it extends, past 31 years. So, just know the even though we'd never want kids to have to take out loans, if they do have to, it's not really affecting that number much.
Right. It's the cost, right? It's private versus public. It's just what is the total amount of dollars. Whether you're paying it back with loans or paying it up front is not changing the break even that much. And that's an interesting thing to keep in mind. Yeah, and and there's one more thing about this break even thing, which is like, I have a niece who's going to get married soon, and they were kind of waiting until the two of them kind of were near a break even, right? And to do that because they wanted to be like financially on the positive, and it's kind of like that, right? And so if you want to think about these things because it can delay other life choices, right? Because you're like, oh my gosh, we're both 24 and we're completely underwater with debt, and we're not making money yet because we've been, trying to figure out what job we want and changing jobs, then that could delay things like that too, and so this is all stuff to talk about before you go to college. Run the numbers on it, think about it, talk about it so that you can make good decisions. And students should, work with you and figure out what their skills are, because that's the first part of that conversation, right?
And I got to tell you, Bobby, you got me motivated. I am going to put together an email for all of the people on my email list. This is important stuff. So,
yeah. Well, great. I think this is a great discussion and something that people should definitely talk about with their kids.